everybody. Welcome to Conventional Wisdom Sucks. I'm Ann Riley, and I'm delighted to be here again today. Today, we're going to have a special episode about government. And the reason I feel the need to have this episode is because over the last few months, I've been talking to people about a lot of ideas about government, and it seems very common that people don't actually understand what government is and what the purpose of it is. So we're going to stop, take a time out on all our busting up on conventional wisdom, and talk about this basic topic. There are three things we're going to cover today. One is, what is government? Two is, what is the purpose of government? And three, the real question is there a model of government that would be best for humans to choose to get the best results for humans and their societies? Okay, so let's start with what is government. So if you go to the dictionary, they will say that government is, I've got it here, is a system or group responsible for making and enforcing rules for a society or a country or a community. And ChatGPT had a little bit different take on that same definition, which is that how a society organizes itself to get things done. So these are both interesting definitions because they both talk about doing things, organizing, making rules to get things done or for a country, but they don't exactly explain what it is that they're supposed to be getting done. And that's the basic crux of our problem here, is I just don't think we have any context to understand what it is that governments are supposed to be doing. So let's look at government a little bit differently. Let's look at it as a coordinating mechanism that helps societies, the people in societies coexist, or to get things done, as they say. Okay, so again, the question will be, how do you do that? So we'll talk about that. But right now, if we look at coordination as the definition of a government, it's a coordinating mechanism. We can see that it has existed since cells have existed, since life on Earth has existed. And so I want to go back and talk about how coordination or government exists in nature, and we can start to understand how we can look at human government. All right. So if you look at a cell is made up of a nucleus with some DNA in it and a bunch of other parts that all work together to keep the cell alive. So how does a cell stay alive? Well, a cell, like I said, has DNA inside it. DNA is a set of instructions that a cell has accumulated by evolution over time that has so far enabled it to survive. Those instructions, what happens is when a cell is hit with some kind of stimulus, like it runs into a piece of food or something, then it sends a message up to the DNA. The DNA pulls its big library of instructions out and says, this is the reaction I want, and then sends that instruction back to that part of the cell, and the cell responds. Okay, now, what happens in nature is a cell going through this process, the cell will either live or die. If the cell dies, it's out. Its DNA is out, it's dead. It doesn't get to play on life Earth anymore. But if a cell survives, then it keeps going. And if it does procreate at some point, it transfers that successful DNA to the next generation of cells. And this goes on and on and on. And over time, evolution changes those cells, right? And one of the changes that they made was to convert single cells into multicellular creatures like sponges or fish or tigers or humans. Okay, so we are, all of us beings, this complex beings, are really just an accumulation of cells in a particular form. Okay, and what's interesting about us is that each of our bodies, even though we have 35 humans, we have 35 trillion cells, we all share the exact same DNA in every single one of those cells, which means we all carry the same instructions and have the ability to follow the same instructions. Okay, so this is really, really important. So, in order for a body to evolve, a complex body to form, obviously you need a lot more coordination than you had at the cellular level. So instead of just one little nucleus with DNA in it, we have a whole set of cells whose job together is to provide that coordination function. And those cells are the brain and the nervous system. Okay, the nervous system sends the signals up to the brain, and the brain distributes all that processing through all of its neurons and decides how to act, and then sends those messages back down through the nervous system and then to the particular part of the body that's supposed to act. So this is a very complicated process, right? With 35 trillion cells, we have 100 billion neurons that have evolved to do the job. And the point of this evolution of a brain and a nervous system, it was the best way for a body to survive and for the cells inside the body to survive. Okay, so each animal has developed a brain that is suitable to its environment, right? Fish have a brain that works with their environment in water. Humans have, well, let's leave humans aside for a minute. Tigers have a brain that allows them to run fast and to catch other animals and to survive that way. So each animal's brain is evolved to fit in their environment. But we know that these coordination mechanisms, these brains and nervous systems aren't perfect, right? If the environment changes on us and we don't have the instructions to survive in that environment, we will die. This is what happened with the dinosaurs in 65 million years ago when the meteor Chicxulub crashed into Earth. It created an environment that was dark and cold, and the dinosaurs did not have the DNA instructions to handle that particular problem, that event that occurred, and so they died out. Now, there were some little tiny kind of rodents running around, and one of them, who's usually the meal for dinosaurs, was able to survive and thrive in that environment because they had no predators anymore. And those became the line in which humans eventually formed many, many millions of years later. So coordination is really complex, but isn't perfect. Okay, so humans work exactly the same way. When we're born, we have a brain and we have a fully coordinating system that keeps our body alive and our cells alive, right? But our brains do something else. We can think, we can choose, we can create ideas and then use those ideas to make stuff. But when we do that, we can choose, like we can make lots of ideas, right? But we'll only act on some of them. So when we have ideas and we act on them, we're creating our own ecosystem of ideas. For instance, I can think about, and this is very different from everybody else in nature, from all the other creatures in nature. For instance, I can think about writing a book about government, right? Or making a little program, a YouTube program about the purpose of government, right? A bee can't. They can't think about making a program on YouTube about government. They can do the things that their DNA programs them to do, and they do them really well. I can also do all the things that my DNA programs me to do, and I do them really well, but I do this extra thing, which is think and act on those thoughts. Okay? So the question becomes, let's go back to our question of government. How do you coordinate systems to get things done, right? How to organize yourself to get things done? Well, we have to use coordinating systems as well. And we have coordinating systems at every level, just like nature does. So we know we talked about the cell and has its DNA to act and keep the cell alive. Well, you as an individual also have the ability to create the ideas that make your life the most satisfying, right? We don't think about this. You have to create your coordinating mechanism for you to live happily on Earth, or in some way that it's at least not dissonant. Okay? What we do is we call those things values, right? These are the important, critical, essential things that you believe in that you need to do in order to make your life meaningful to you. Okay? And that is everyone's job in life, to make those values and then live by them. Although we don't always do that because it's a choice, right? Some people don't make that choice at all. They get their values from elsewhere and they never think about their own values, and then they just live their life according to other people's ideas. Okay, so it's a choice. But the first equivalence is that the cell's DNA instructions and your values work the same way as coordinating systems. Okay, let's go a level up in humans. Inside, a human usually lives first in a family, right? And what is a family? It has a coordinating mechanism. It's made up of a bunch of people, however many people are in the family. And then there's a coordinating mechanism called the parents, right? And what they do is they decide what the goals are for that family, what the actions are that you will implement. They will figure out what school you go to. They will tell you what ideas to think of. They will tell you what's good and they will tell you what's bad. Parents are the coordinating mechanism. And the idea is that as children grow, the parents are slowly transferring the coordinating skill to their children so that they will become functional adults, right? That's the plan. We don't always do that really well either because it's a choice, right? We have a choice. We don't have to do that because in humans, we have this superpower of choice where we can think thoughts optionally and we can act on them optionally. Okay, so that is a very important concept. Let's go one level up. When people people in our family, but then they go out in the world and they start joining other groups, and people can join all kinds of other groups, right? And we can be part of a ski club or the book club, or we can be part of a church, or we can get a job at an organization. Anytime two or more people join together to create some kind of an institution, whether it's a church or a business or a nonprofit or a book club, right? It requires coordination. Without coordination, you have chaos and anarchy. So people they almost invariably choose to figure out some organizing mechanism, a coordinating mechanism for these institutions. A business has a management team, right? A CEO and a whole bunch of people who administer the organization. A church has a pope, right, or an imam or some leader, and then there's a whole bunch of clerics down the way that reach out and actually administer the church's rules to the people, right? And every organization has this sort of mechanism, a management of some sort, right? And and it is, sorry, I'm just trying to read my notes here. It is required in order to prevent chaos. But again, it's a choice. There is no guarantee that says a management will be good. It just is a management that is chosen by the people who get together and form the group. All right, so the highest level, we're going to talk about governments. Governments are the coordinating mechanism for a society. It could be a state level, it could be a community level, it could be a country level. We don't yet have a world organization. We don't have that type of a government yet. I think someday we'll probably end up there, but we're not there yet. But instead, we have all these coordinating mechanisms that do exactly what they're the same idea. They are there to make sure that all the people are protected and that the society is protected. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to read over some more notes and then get back to you in a minute. Thanks. Welcome back. Thanks for being patient while I checked my notes again and made sure I knew what I was talking about. But last time we left with the concept that government is the coordinating mechanism for societies. And societies come at different levels, right? We have communities, we have states, we have countries. Theoretically, we could have a world society, but we don't have that yet. We do not all consent to be governed by one worldwide coordinating mechanism. So our highest level is basically at the country level. Now, there's a big difference between natural coordinating mechanisms and our human coordinating mechanisms. Nothing requires humans to make good governments. And nothing requires us to make good parents or make good organizations or make good governments. On the other hand, nature is constantly tested by the environment in which it lives, right? A animal in any environment, its coordinating system requires it to keep its creature alive. And if it doesn't, it's out. It doesn't get to play on this earth anymore. But this is very important because it has been 4 billion years, almost 4 billion years of evolution to create these mechanisms that we have seen. And they are really amazing. They're complex. Again, your body has 35 trillion cells and 100 billion neurons, and your body works really, really well. And that's a complicated job to run your body. And again, your brain is only 3% of your body's mass, but it uses 20% of the energy you take in from food in order to run. It's a very complex, expensive process, but it is amazing, right? But nothing makes, it requires our governments to be amazing. And this is where I think we have a really big disconnect, because it's like humans live in two systems, right? On one hand, we live in the physical world where our brain operates our body and does it really, really well. On the other hand, we live in this idea world that we've created in which we can choose. We are maximizing, we like to choose, and when we choose, that's what makes our life satisfying, right? We choose our values. We choose how we act in our families. We choose how we behave in management, or in companies. We get to choose. That's what makes life satisfying. So if we were going to look at the parallels of government, if we were just going to be a government that was like nature, we would say, okay, well, everything you do has to keep your cells alive and your body alive. So a government, everything you should do should keep your people alive and therefore your society alive. But we're choosers too. We want to have the choice to choose how we act. We're not just cells in a body. So we have to adjust a government goal to be not just to allow everybody to be safe and protected and to live, but for also to allow us to maximize our choices. So if we have wanted to have a good government that was mirrored on nature but adjusts for our human ability to choose, we would have something like this. We would allow everybody to make as many choices as they want, as long as they don't harm any of the other people involved. Because if other people are worried about being harmed, they won't be able to maximize their choices, right? So for everybody to get as many choices as they can't cross the line into hurting somebody else so that they can't make their choices. So that's the way we should see government in human world, where we live in both of these worlds. We live in the physical world and we live in the idea world. Okay. So let's take a quick look at the governments that we have had over the years in humanity. The first main government we've had has been things like monarchies or oligarchies, or very like a few leaders at the top. Okay. And those leaders are usually, they operate for the good of the leader. Okay. This is a monarchy. The king gets taken care of and everybody else serves the king, right? And the king may give benefits to the people. Like they might say, okay, we'll protect you. We'll put a big fence around the village or something. But you have to give us taxes and you have to do everything we say and everything. So then the benefit is mutual but not equal. Okay. Another kind of government that we have today is the communism, or excuse me, communism, which is that the government is designed for the good of the state, the good of the country, not for the good of the people. And in that case, you have the government deciding what people can do, when they can do it, and how they can do it. And it doesn't matter what the people want, because it's the good of the government, the good of the state that matters. So if you look at those two mechanisms, both of those mechanisms really have either the king at the center or the country at the center, but not the people inside the country. But democracy is the one government form where it's designed to be the good of the people, right? The democracy exists for the good of the people. And this is as close to you as you get to nature as you can, given that we're people, right? So the idea of democracy is that everybody, every action that is taken, every rule that's made, every enforcement that's made is made for the good of the people. Okay, so that's, I think, the closest model we have to nature is democracy. Now, I want to take a little bit of a look at the United States Constitution, because the United States Constitution is the coordinating goal of our country. Okay, and inside the preamble of the Constitution, it sets those goals up, and they are: establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Now, that is really close to saying, let people do what they want, just don't harm anybody else. But at the time they wrote the Constitution, they couldn't say it that clearly. They didn't know about DNA. They didn't know about cells. They didn't know about brains and how they work like we do today. In 1787, this was a pretty amazing list of purposes or goals to try and have a country achieve. So I give the Founding Fathers like huge kudos for making this the constitutional document. It's quite amazing. But I want to leave you with the idea that if we have a model for what works, I would say the model of life and nature and your own brain is so successful at coordinating that we should use the tools and the mechanisms that our brains use to sort out a version of democracy that will be more effective than maybe what we have today. And we can't just take nature directly and say, oh, we have to do this and this and this, because we are not just cells. We are people with choice. So we have to make sure that the democracy that we advocate for is to be infused with this ability to choose, even as it's infused with the requirement that we do no harm. Okay, I'll leave it there. We'll be studying, our conventional wisdom will be based on these things as we go forward. It will be based on the things that nature does that we should do, but we don't do. Okay, we'll be talking again soon about those things. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.